Hello, welcome back to We the People Politics. Today, we will be making a prediction map for the presidential election using current polling data. We will be applying the polling error from the most recent Senate and gubernatorial elections to come out of each state. In calculating the polling error, I took the average of the 5 most recent polls from before each election and calculated the difference between that margin and the final margin in the actual election. When I do apply the polling error to the polls, I will only be using polls from this month, but if any state does not have any polling data from this month of June, then we will use the most recent poll to come from out of that state. As always, we will use data that both includes and excludes third parties. However, if any specific poll has data for both, then we will only use the data that includes third parties. With all of that information out of the way, let's get predicting. We will first take a look at the polling data for the most recent gubernatorial elections across the US. As we can see on this map, the polls were predicting a Republican victory in Wisconsin, which did not happen, but aside from that, every other polling average was correct, even in close states like Kansas and Virginia. This map shows how much the polls were off by. As we can see, the Democrats were very underestimated in the Rust Belt states, in the swing states of Arizona and Nevada. The Republicans did not overperform in any critical swing states, unless you consider North Carolina to be critical. They did slightly improve in the somewhat close states of Minnesota and Virginia, but this map overall definitely favors the Democrats. Let's move over to the Senate map, where Republicans were projected to win Nevada, while the Democrats were projected to win Maine. However, neither of those ended up actually happening. Aside from that, the polls predicted every single race correctly. Also, I used the 2020 election for Alaska instead of the 2022 election because the latter was in between two Republican candidates. Moving over to the polling error for the Senate races, we can see that Democrats overperformed in every single critical swing state except for Michigan, where Republicans greatly overperformed. Republicans overperformed in Minnesota and Virginia by much larger margins than in the governor's elections. They overperformed in Maine by a whopping 12%, and they overperformed in the potential battleground state of New Jersey by 9%. If we take the average polling error for both election maps combined, Democrats overperform in every critical swing state, especially Pennsylvania, where they overperformed by 5 points. However, Republicans overperformed in the close but left-leaning states of Minnesota, Virginia, New Jersey, New Mexico, and Maine. Next, we will apply this polling error to the current polling data. As always, we will start with the safe states, which are determined by a margin of 12 percentage points or higher. Starting with President Biden, his safe states will be Washington, California, Colorado, as Democrats drastically overperformed there, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Vermont. For President Trump, these states will be Alaska, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, North and South Dakota, Nebraska at large, and I think it's safe to say it's first in third congressional districts, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, as Trump will overperform by 4% there, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, South Carolina, Florida, as the Republicans massively overperformed there as well, and Maine's second congressional district. This gives Trump 202 safe electoral votes compared to Biden's 107. As for the remaining states, we will go from west to east, starting with the state of Hawaii, where Biden's lead of 8% will be increased to 10%, meaning that Hawaii will remain mostly unchanged and likely Biden. A likely state is determined by a margin of 5 to 12 percentage points. In Oregon, Biden leads by an 11-point margin in a poll from April. That will be reduced to a 10-point lead, keeping Oregon likely Biden. Trump is currently leading in Nevada by an average of 4 3/5 points. However, since Democrats overperformed by 2.5 points in the midterms, his lead will shrink to 2 points, making Nevada barely lean Trump. A lean state is determined by a margin of 2 to 5 percentage points. Trump leads by a slightly larger margin of 6.5% in Arizona. However, he will lose 3 points here as well, meaning that Arizona will also be lean Trump. We finally have a new poll out of New Mexico after about 10 months of nothing that has Biden leading by a 7-point margin. Seeing as Republicans overperformed by only 2 points in the statewide elections, Biden will take New Mexico by a likely margin. Republican Congressman Don Bacon overperformed in Nebraska's 2nd District by 1 point, which would lower Biden's current lead from 5 to 4 points, meaning that Nebraska's 2nd District will be lean Biden. Up in the state of Minnesota, Biden leads by just over 1 point in current polls. However, when we take the polling error into account, it becomes a Trump lead of just under 2 points, making Minnesota tilt Trump. A tilt state is determined by a margin of 2 points or under. Trump currently leads in Wisconsin by a half a point average. However, since Democrats overperformed here by 4 points, Wisconsin will easily become lean Biden. Biden has a 10-point lead in the most recent poll from Illinois. That will become an 11-point lead when applying the polling error, meaning that Illinois will continue to be likely Biden. In the state of Michigan, Trump leads by just over 1.5%, just like Wisconsin. However, Democrats have only improved the polling here by 1 point, meaning that Michigan will barely be tilt Trump. Trump is currently leading in the state of Ohio by a 7-point margin, which, due to the polling being very accurate here in the governor's and Senate elections, will remain likely Trump. Moving down to the state of Georgia, Trump currently leads by an average of just under 7 percentage points, which, due to the Democrats overperforming here by about 1 point, will just barely be likely Trump. Similar story in North Carolina, where Trump is currently leading by 7%. However, he would do 2 points better, making North Carolina likely Trump by a pretty substantial margin. Virginia is currently a Biden lead of 1%. However, seeing as Republicans overperformed here by 4 points, it will actually be lean Trump. In Pennsylvania, Trump leads by an average of 2.3 percentage points. However, since Democrats overperformed here by a large margin of 5 percentage points in the midterms, it will actually become lean Biden. Just like in my previous polling error video, we will use the Kennedy poll for Delaware as it is the only polling data to come out of the state. If we take Biden's margin of victory over Kennedy and add Kennedy's margin of victory over Trump, we get a Biden lead of 10 points. If we apply the polling error, it drops to a 2-point lead, making Delaware lean Biden. Biden leads in New Jersey by 5 percentage points. However, with Republicans overperforming by an average of 7 percentage points, it will barely be lean Trump. Up in New York, Biden leads by 8 points in a recent Siena College poll. That will drop to a 6-point lead with the polling error, keeping New York likely Biden. Biden leads in Connecticut by 9 points in an October poll, and since Republicans only overperformed there by 1 point, it will remain likely Biden. In the state of New Hampshire, Biden leads by an average of 1.5%, according to 2 polls that both ended on the 20th. However, since Democrats overperformed by 4 points in the midterms, it will become likely Biden. In Maine's 1st congressional district, Biden leads by 8 percentage points, which will be increased to 9 points since Congresswoman Shelley Pingree overperformed there in 2022, keeping the 1st district likely Biden. Finally, in Maine at large, Biden leads by 2 points in the head-to-head matchup, which we will use since Maine uses ranked choice voting. However, since Republicans overperformed here by 5 points, largely due to Susan Collins overperforming by 12, Trump will win the state by a lean margin. And with that, we can clear this prediction map. Trump wins with 322 electoral votes to Biden's 216. This is a very odd map, as Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, both of which were very competitive in 2020 and 2016, are both lean Biden, while Virginia, Maine, and New Jersey, which went for Biden by very large margins, are lean Trump. I definitely think that this scenario is very unlikely compared to the scenario in which we used the 2020 polling error. If you would like to watch that video, the link will be in the description down below. If you enjoyed this video, Be sure to like and subscribe. I would appreciate it very much. If you have any thoughts on this map, be sure to respectfully comment them down below. With all of that said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.